That may not have been, that was a picture, I say, taken that day.
I was not shown it on the 5th of August. I was shown one picture on the 5th of August.
It was not my point. But that was you now have before you.
No marked differences, no.
Now, you feel that if you had seen that picture and then seen Mr. Chambers come walking into the room, that you would identify the two as being the same, do you not?
Mr. Munt, I would like to remind you, I think you were not in New York on the day when I first saw Mr. Chambers since this testimony of his had occurred. One was that he himself testified that he had had major alterations in his teeth. I have a recollection of Crosley as a man with notably poor teeth. I also identified him on the basis of his statement in my presence that he had been in my apartment with my permission when I was not there but was living on Peace Street, on the basis of his statement in my presence that with my permission he had spent several days in my house on Peace Street at about the same time, and finally because he admitted to the authorship of a tall tale which I remembered Crosley as having told me, and which I think I testified to the committee either on Monday or on Tuesday, that I did recall Crosley as having told, namely that for local color purposes, as a writer, he had participated in laying the tracks of the first street railway in Washington, D.C. That struck me when I first heard it as a tall tale. It still does.
Mr. George Crosley.
I told your committee that I was prepared to identify Chambers as the man I had known under the circumstances I have testified to as Crosley. That is the record. That is the fact. Mr. Hebert accused me of agility. I accept no accusation except that of truth.
Do you find any major... And the picture taken on the day Mr. Whittaker Chambers testified before the committee?
Afraid I wouldn't be able to recognize, you can only see part of the face there. Urged this committee in the letter I sent to the chairman yesterday. I urged. I hope I will have a chance to read that letter into the record so it will be a part of the record. What did you say?
You'll have a chance.
Thank you. I certainly urge this committee not to follow any hit-and-run tactics, to keep right after this issue of who is Chambers, of what credibility to give to his fantastic testimony. I certainly do, and I intend to do the best I can to get to the bottom of this and to give this committee any information I can dig up. And I've asked my counsel so to do as my counsel digs up any facts. I'm very glad to hear it.
To the very last breath, regardless of the cost, regardless of the time, regardless of who is to be embarrassed. So far as the smears go that have been talked about so often during
that description, or looking like him, it's now established testimony that you did know him and that you do know him. There's some doubt about the name, but no question about your having known the individual. You said in the testimony that you were sure anybody who could have lived in your house over a period of time would be somebody whose picture you would be able to identify. But I find that you were unable to identify him from the picture, although you now testify that this man did live in your home over a period of days. You said that you gave Chambers your car, or that you sold or traded. Were you or were you not a communist? This committee never had any illusions that we would be able to prove definitely whether or not you are a communist, because in dealing with people charged with being communists over a period of years, we have found that those who are guilty refuse to admit it and dodge the question or deliberately lie. We know that we cannot get the records of the Communist Party. We can't get their membership cards. But that was a point we couldn't hope to establish by verifiable evidence. And it's now a point in dispute. Second point in dispute is, were you a member of the so-called Ware group, who are alleged to have worked together to promote their associates into key positions of government? You say you were not. Mr. Chambers says that you were. Mr. Chambers said that you were, and that you were associated in that activity with John Apt, Lee Pressman, Nathan Witt, Henry Collins, Harold Ware, and Charles Kramer. You admit that you knew John Apt, Lee Pressman, Nathan Witt, Henry Collins, Harold Ware, Charles Kramer, but you do not know whether or not that they were communists, and that whether they were or not, that you were not associated with them in an effort to promote your associates into key government positions. There's one other point in dispute, and that is, while you both admit this association at the time when it was supposed to have taken place, Mr. Chambers says that you knew him as Carl. You say that you knew him as Crosby. To me, that isn't a very important distinction. The important thing is how close your associations were with this man, who was admittedly a communist at that time. He was a communist functionary. Whether he was living in your home as George Crosby, or Carl, or Whittaker Chambers is comparatively immaterial. The important thing to me, Mr. Hiss, is that he was living in your home, that you were associating with him, that you were taking him out in your car, that you were loaning him your car, that you were letting him use your apartment and making him loans, and having associations with him of that nature. In an endeavor to determine the credibility of two witnesses whose testimony conflicts on some of these points which are still in dispute, we endeavored to establish that by checking first Mr. Chambers' testimony to see whether or not it would stand up, to see whether or not you were an ornithologist, to see whether or not you had a car which had a hand windshield wiper, to see whether or not he came in cold, with no predisposition as to your conduct or reputation whatsoever, who after you first testified was
government agencies for 10 years or so, stories about me. During that time, he has had an opportunity to check on all sorts of details about my personality. Self-discredited accuser whose names and aliases are as numerous and as casual as his accusations. The other side of this question is the reliability of the allegations before this committee, the undocumented statements of the man who now calls himself Whittaker Chambers. Is he a man of consistent reliability, truthfulness, and honor? Clearly not. He admits it, and the committee knows it. Indeed, is he a man of sanity? Getting the facts about Whittaker Chambers, if that is his name, will not be easy. My own counsel have made inquiries in the past few days and have learned that his career is not, like those of normal men, an open book. His operations have been furtive and concealed. Why? What does he have to hide? I am glad to help get the facts. At this point, I should like to repeat the action in being kind to Crosley years ago was one of humaneness, with results which surely some members of the committee have experienced. You do a favor for a man, he comes for another, he gets a third favor from you. When you finally realize he is an inveterate repeater, you get rid of him. If your loss is only a loss of time and money, you are lucky. You may find yourself calumniated in a degree depending on whether the man is unbalanced or worse. And now I would like this committee to ask these questions on my behalf of the man who calls himself Whittaker Chambers. I would like these to be part of the statement which the committee has authorized me to make. Where does he reside now?
I noticed that